Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome again to More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith, and we are hoping that your 2024 was a great year. And we are hoping even more that 2025 is even better.
Oh yeah, for sure. And have a good holiday and New Year's, Jordan.
I definitely did. It was a little bit bittersweet around Christmas time. For those that aren't aware, we mentioned this in the previous episode. My mom, back in October, unfortunately passed away in an accident. So this was the first Christmas and New Year's without her. However, the family that I was able to go and spend it with really still pulled through for each other. We made it very enjoyable. We had a lot of laughs. We had a good time, made some wonderful memories in memory of my mom. Now I'm back here and we're excited to start recording episodes for 2025.
Yeah, I had a pretty good holiday myself. I spent a few days mostly in Tennessee where my brother lives, and we kind of stayed together, all five of us in Sevierville, Pigeon Forge area. And while we were there, me, my dad, my brother saw the new Timothy Chalamet film, A Complete Unknown, in a film house that was still showing Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which I'm sure we'll get into in just a moment.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we'll be talking quite a bit about that and other stuff and adaptations and sequels. And if you have any thoughts, just leave them in the YouTube comments, people, or on my Instagram. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, we'll probably say this at the end of the episode too, like we always do. But any interaction we have with our audience is always exciting. And of course, always welcome.
Yeah, yeah. So, did you see Sonic 3 yet?
As of now, I have seen it 4 times, and tomorrow I'm going to go see it for a fifth time.
Oh, yeah. So, how was it?
Honestly, maybe this could be my Sonic bias coming through a little bit because I grew up with the franchise, but I love this movie. It is based on one of my favorite games. It introduces one of my favorite characters, not just in Sonic, but in fiction in general.
Sure.
I felt like the story was well put together, the music they used was great, and Keanu Reeves voicing Shadow was just amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. So, yeah. I'm actually Googling right now. It is actually, this is a report from Variety a couple days ago. Actually, it's saying that the Mufasa movie eh, topped the domestic box office, but on a brighter side, in the first weekend, you know, Sonic 3 topped that one. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too much of an exaggeration when I say that Sonic 3 and Mufasa have kind of been at war with each other a little bit. And some of that reason is because, they released on the exact same day, and some people were leaning very heavily towards one movie or the other for whatever reason. Um, I never went to see Mufasa. I just thought it was one of those cash grab type things, making a prequel that no one really was requesting, and it didn't seem that promising anyway. But again, maybe that's just my bias talking for Sonic. Um, but yeah, domestically, when they released here in the US, at least for the first 2 or 3 weeks, Sonic whooped their butts. Uh, however, uh, when it came to international numbers, Mufasa was beating Sonic, and part of the reason for that is because Sonic didn't release internationally right away. It was only in the US and maybe some select other countries or whatever. But now that they've been out longer, Mufasa is in more theaters, so they're able to still have a steadier flow of income, and kind of makes sense. Disney is a big company, so they can pull something like that off.
And they probably have the advantage of having more theme parks around the world. So
Right.
that probably gave them a little more edge.
It definitely does help. The one thing I wasn't particularly fond of is when the Walt Disney Studio Twitter page, I still call it Twitter, by the way, uh, basically was lying when I think it was like about a week ago now. They were saying that Mufasa is the number one movie in America, which was just straight up false. And people who saw the Sonic movie were really letting them know by constantly saying, here's the actual numbers, that's not correct. And anything that had to do with Sonic, the Disney Twitter page started hiding those comments, which made people even more frustrated. But financially speaking, both movies are doing really well, at least to some degree. I don't know how much money it costs each of them to make their movies. I'm willing to bet that Mufasa was a bit more expensive, so they would have to make more money in order to break even. But I would say when it compares to how much it costs to make the movie versus how much they're making, Sonic 3 would technically be the more successful one.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, so some of those numbers can get really complicated because you got to take into effect how much did it cost to make the movie? How much did you have to spend on advertising or some other sort of promotions for your movie? But yeah, Sonic 3 has so far been the best rated one on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's the fastest growing one out of the three Sonic films, financially speaking, and it helped the Sonic films collectively get over the $1 billion mark, which for video game adaptations, which we'll also discuss, I'm sure, is really impressive.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's doing well, and well, pretty much similarly, Cobra Kai, which I'm a fan, is just wrapped up the second of its 3-act final season, and the final episodes are going to drop in February. And I'm looking at the I just googled the ratings, and the IMDb ratings for that so far have been on a 5-star scale. Overwhelming majority 5-star ratings, so that's good. And I've seen, like research of like the first season or two getting perfect Rotten Tomatoes scores, but and it hasn't stayed the same. But it's I think for my time, because I don't want to say for my money, it has been an overall well done show, and and it's been littered with surprise twists and really good performances and very intriguing, suspenseful story writing. And and I don't want to spoil anything, but the last episode ended on quite the cliffhanger, and it's definitely getting me curious for what's to come.
Now, from what I understand, when filming this final season, it was kind of put on hold because there were some strikes going on over the past year or so.
I believe, yeah, because of the writers' union strike, which, for all I know, could still be ongoing.
I don't know if it still is. I know there was a strike for actors and voice actors. There was some sort of strike that was very similar for something that has to do with gaming. I'd have to look into that. But yeah, there were a lot of films and shows that were affected by this. I think Stranger Things was, Cobra Kai was,
Yeah.
Sonic 3 was, from what I understand. But I think what they did to work around that is they filmed all the scenes that did not have any humans in it first, so that by the time the strike was over, they'd be able to get all their actors back in and finish the rest of the movie. I don't
Yeah, I think
know.
I heard. I think I heard someone, my dad, say that they used like an AI version of a character for one Cobra Kai scene, but you probably couldn't tell the difference. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but it sounds like that's what he told me.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because, especially when you film something in live action, it can be hard to film a lot of scenes like that without the actual people because, the interactions are very important and you have to know where and who you're looking at. And if no one's actually there, that can be a lot more challenging. So they might have used some CGI version of somebody as a stand-in until they could get their actors back.
Yeah. Well, well, I could generally say the AI is pretty generic, and it could have compromised the quality of a scene, but it wasn't really that noticeable. I'll say if it was there in that case, from what I viewed, but
Okay.
yeah, I do remember like seeing Wicked in the theaters and seeing the previews popping up and Sonic 3 being one of the advertised films and thinking, oh, yep, Jordan or something like that.
Yeah, I would go to see one or two movies in theaters, and that would have an advertisement playing at the beginning for Sonic 3, and I would just get so excited. It's like I've already seen the trailer on YouTube, but there's just something about seeing a trailer in the movie theater. There's just something about the size and the scope of it that just makes it seem much more grand.
Yeah, and the environment sort of like the large screen, the dim lights, the surround sound. Yeah, and yeah, even TV commercials that you've probably already seen at home. Feel like yeah, there is a different feel to it.
Yeah, sometimes they will just show random commercials for something in the movie theater instead of a trailer. And depending on the commercial, yeah, it definitely can make a difference if you're seeing it on a screen that big.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. So, did you see Wicked yet? Kind of just to ask.
I have not seen Wicked yet. No, it's not like I don't want to see it. It's just like I haven't had this huge drive, like, I've got to go see this movie right now. Um, that being said, anyone I've talked to that has seen it said it was actually pretty good and that it's only part one of two, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's only covers the first act, and honestly, I probably wouldn't have been as motivated to actually go see it had it not been for my younger sister, who's probably the biggest fan of the Broadway musical that I personally know. And as far as I know, it's her favorite of all time. And I was I did listen. I wasn't too familiar with the musical plot myself, honestly, but I did listen to the soundtrack a little bit and a bit to kind of prepare myself for it. And I thought thought it was a wonderfully creative take on the musical, and everyone did such a good job. And particularly, I have to say, I I was very astonished by Ariana Grande's performance as Galinda. I feel like for so long the media, I mean, not even the press, but the media has not done her justice. This is from seeing subsequent interviews. This is the kind of thing I feel like she's been wanting to take on for so long,
Hmm.
and she hasn't quite had the chance or hasn't had quite the confidence from other directors or whatever to do it. And and she worked so hard to prove us so wrong, and I, I'm I'm just so happy for her.
You saying that, I will definitely agree that I'm happy for her. I will admit, when they first announced that she was cast in this movie, I was kind of on the fence, not because of just her being there. It was more like, I know she can sing because she has like a bunch of hit songs out there. I just wasn't sure if she could act. I hadn't really seen her do a lot of acting, but yeah, like you're saying, it sounds like she did really well. So if that's the case, then I'm happy she was able to pull this off.
Yeah, I feel like this is like a lifelong long dream of hers come true from the interviews that I saw with her, and I just I really think this is something that's closer to the stuff she really wants to do and hasn't been able to do. And so, uh, so glad it happened.
Yeah, this could be a good starting point for her to get into something bigger.
Yeah, it's like the start of a new breakthrough era for her, to put it in fewer words.
And with this only being part one, chances are her name's still going to be out there in the acting world for a little bit. So maybe in the process of the second one being done, she'll get roles and other stuff too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Time will tell.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, and so we've talked for a while now about sequels and adaptations.
Mhm.
Well, Sonic 3 or Cobra Kai anyway, because Cobra Kai is basically an extension of the Karate Kid universe. But yeah, we were thinking about the question, like when we were kind of planning out this episode of what sequels and adaptations worked and what didn't. And I don't know if I might have thought of some in particular. I think of like immediately what comes to mind, like the Toy Stories. I think at least two and three, three worked in kind of extending, not just for like for like nostalgia or prolonging someone that was successful to begin with, but in that case, well, like possibly higher stakes, more exploration of kind of a toy owner identity crisis, and I know that's best as I can describe it.
You know, what I would recommend people to do is our mutual friend Andrew, he has a YouTube channel called Anthill Shaped Box where he reviews movies, and he actually just talked about the original Toy Story trilogy. And he kind of touched up on the fourth one a little bit near the end, but he was talking about how solid the first three movies were. And Toy Story 2 and 3 were actually on my list. I think they were really clever with the way they released these movies because normally when you make a sequel, you don't want to wait too long in between installments. But I think what they did with Toy Story 3 with Andy going to college, that was really good timing because most of the people that grew up with Toy Story 1 and 2, they were young kids at that point, like Andy was. And by the time the third one comes out, they're going to college like Andy is. So they can relate even all those years later with what this kid is going through.
Yeah, I believe when the third came out, I was maybe 17 years old, so I would have been late in high school, or maybe a little older than that. But yeah, so I was probably like right about the right age for it.
All right, then yeah, that would have fallen right in line you, with you growing up watching those movies, assuming that you did.
Yeah, I did. I watched the first two quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I definitely did as well, especially the second one. There was just something about the way they told that story that I just loved. But yeah, Toy Story, at least the first three, showed that you can make sequels that, even if they don't necessarily get better and better as they go, can be solid all the way through. And that can be said for other films as well, like the Lord of the Rings movies, for example. That was a large scale project to do because those are long, long stories, and the movies themselves are notorious for how long they are. But
And
they
the
are,
films they're all the same story, just in separate parts, I think, right?
well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like even the books are basically sequels of each other, or at least continuations of the previous part of the story. Uh, yeah, it was a large undertaking to take on that kind of a story, and now at least the first three movies and maybe even one or two of the Hobbit movies are widely regarded as some of the best fantasy films ever. And then other movie adaptations, taken from the story of a book that did really well, or like some of the Narnia films. They never got around to doing all of them, although I think Netflix is trying to fix that. In terms of the ones that we've seen, they had an adaptation of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They did Prince Caspian. They
The Witch
did.
of the Dawn Treader. Saw
Yep.
that one too.
Yeah, I think they did those three, and then they kind of just stopped. I want to say they were planning to make the other ones and never did. But I personally enjoyed those. I don't know if people regard them as much as they do with like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or something like that. But I grew up with those movies and I personally loved them.
Yeah. One that came to my mind was in kind of an irony, because we did the Willy Wonka musical a few years ago, which I think more closely followed the 1970s film starring Gene Wilder. As good as that might have been, I'm thinking more about the later, decades later film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, directed by Tim Burton, which followed the book more closely, from what I understand, and even expanded on it really nicely by adding the made-up storyline about Wonka's relationship with his dad, and which kind of helped give some context to why Willy Wonka is the way he is. From what I remember, I've only viewed it once technically. I might want to watch it again, but from the analysis that I've heard and from what I remember, that's kind of that's kind of what made it work for me, I think.
I don't know if I've ever actually seen the entirety of that version. I know I've seen some clips. I think the most common one I've seen is when Veruca is being taken down the chute by the squirrels.
Yeah.
But I know about the plot point with Willy Wonka and his father. And I know at the end of the film, you see the kids actually coming out of the factory, which was different from the movie in the 70s, because Willy Wonka just said, "Oh, they'll be fine. They'll be fine." But you actually see them come out of the factory in this one, and you show how what they did affected them. Like one of them was really stretched out. One of them was covered in garbage. One of them was blue.
Yeah, and it was in the book too. I don't know if you read it or not. Not there. You can see it was illustrated in the book at the end.
Yeah, that much I understood. From what I can tell, the 70s film kind of went its own path.
Yeah.
To some degree. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was closer to the book, and then the musical adaptation was kind of somewhere in between, where you could definitely tell when it was referring to the 70s film, but it was also taking inspiration from the book.
Yeah. Yeah. But
See, and then another film I wanted to address when it came to an adaptation based off of a book was a movie that came out in, I think it was September of 2024, and that's The Wild Robot. I honestly wasn't sure what to expect from this film. I didn't know the original story, but there was a day where I didn't really have much going on. And then I was like, you know what? I just want to go see a movie. And I saw The Wild Robot was in theaters. It's like, okay, it seems to be getting good ratings. I'll check it out. And it honestly was incredible. It is one of the better animated films I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and it was reading it was directed by the Lilo and Stitch guy, Chris Sanders, and and lately I've been seeing that character Stitch popping up quite a bit lately, honestly.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is because I think later this year is when the live action Lilo and Stitch movie comes out.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that one's going to go. Disney doesn't exactly have the best reputation with their live action remakes. Maybe this one will be different. I don't know.
Yeah. Just how good can they make a CGI Stitch look? I guess we'll find out.
Well, I know when he was first revealed at Disney's Expo last year, that people were saying he looked pretty good, and they of course started comparing him to Sonic, because when Sonic was first revealed in the trailer for his first film, his design was absolutely atrocious. So they started redesigning him, and now anytime people see a furry CGI animal, especially based on something that wasn't originally CGI, they'll start making comparisons like, "Oh, this looks good," kind of like how Sonic looks now. But Stitch, at the very least, he looks okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at some. I was just looking at some photos. I don't know if they're from the film itself or not. They I just googled like CGI Stitch remake or action movie or something, and yeah, the images look pretty good.
He's definitely pretty solid. I hope they do him justice in this film. Don't know if I'll see it in theaters, but at the very least, they got Stitch right in terms of looks.
Oh, yeah, it seems so.
And then sometimes you get adaptations or sequels that do really well, and then you get a sequel that follows that one up that doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's two franchises that come to mind with that happening, that being Shrek and Terminator.
Mm.
Terminator 2, I've never seen any of the Terminator films, but from what I've heard the consensus of for that franchise, the first one was good, the second one was phenomenal, and then anything after that was just bad. Like, people love Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but any Terminator movie after that doesn't seem to have any sort of positive reception. And the same can be said similarly for the Shrek films, at least as of now. And I'm not talking about, excuse me, I'm not including, rather, the spin-off Puss in Boots films, because I did enjoy those. But in terms of Shrek specifically, the first one was good. The second one was great. The third one was a big step backwards. And the fourth one wasn't the worst out of all of them, but it still wasn't fantastic, at least to me. But hopefully, with the upcoming fifth film, which they did confirm, maybe they'll pull themselves back up. I don't know.
Yeah. From my experience, I felt like the first two Terminator films feel like they didn't have that much going for them that really kept my genuine interest. But I just, well, no, but I tried my best to follow them. I mean, I felt like the basic plot concept sounded good. I thought, well, I mean, even the slower down moments weren't all that interesting, but I felt like Terminator 2 raised the stakes a bit higher up from the first one, made things more scarier. And
Sure.
so in that way, I think it worked. And and then with the Shrek franchise, as you know, I great start with the first one, on continued hot with the second one, which we saw recently, the reissue.
That's
Um,
true.
yes, um, I feel like it's got the story of with Shrek you could have easily just ended it with the first one on happily ever after, everybody's happy. You could have easily done that, and
Hmm.
people probably would have understood. But they made an intelligent follow up with Shrek 2 and made it something like, well, Shrek still has some hecklers, some opposition to fight, like because he's still an ogre, and he's got to deal with, of course, his new in-laws, his new dad-in-law, who was pretty much ruthless in his heckling, or for lack of a better word,
Sure.
and and he's got to adjust to that. He's got to still deal with the same old insecurity and identity crisis, and and go and get into some trouble and do some stuff of trying to navigate that. And so yeah, that in itself is intriguing enough for a good long, if you do it right, good long sequel.
Now, do you think Shrek 5 has the potential to be good, considering how long it's been since the last one?
I guess it depends on whether the story is worth telling. Like, I'm thinking right back to like when Brad Bird was maybe being talked to about maybe doing a sequel to The Incredibles, which of course he eventually did. He
Mhm.
said, I didn't want to do it. He said, unless I had a story that was worth telling, which I feel like is key. I don't believe in like making follow-ups or sequels just for the sake of nostalgia, personally, or
Mhm.
you know, um, just for the sake of like stimulating or pacifying, again, for lack of better words, fans of what the original was. I feel like there's got to be a legitimate point. It can't just be like for cult reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe leading up to Avengers Endgame did so well, because it was clear from at least near the beginning what the overarching plot was. It's like they're all becoming these heroes, and eventually, they're going to go face to face with the big baddie in the whole story arc, Thanos. And then after 10 or 11 years of setting that up with all these different movies, they finally defeat Thanos. Everything not necessarily goes back to normal, but that's where I feel like it should have stopped, because a lot of the story afterwards, people either just don't seem to care about or has not been told very well. And I think part of the reason is because they don't have that overarching story right now. They don't, it doesn't appear to me necessarily that they have something big to build towards. They do have Robert Downey Jr. coming in to play Doctor Doom, which I think is going to confuse some people. But if you're going to, my point is, if you're going to make a film franchise that has multiple installments, have a plan from the beginning. Don't just, like you were saying, don't just continue the story just because it was popular or for nostalgic reasons. That's why I'm not really excited for movies like Frozen 3, because I feel like they didn't really have a plan for how the story would have moved forward after the first one. But once they saw how popular it was and how much money it was making, they're like, okay, let's make another one.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's gonna do it for now. Again, my Instagram is Seth underscore Mariano underscore AU. And you can also, find us on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, and, questions, comments, thoughts about sequels, adaptations, or anything at all really are very welcome.
You can always reach out to us about really anything, like Seth was saying. But if there's something about this particular topic that you want to add or you want to ask us about, that's okay too. Like, you can tell us what your favorite or least favorite movie adaptation or sequel is. You can tell us which ones you think worked and which ones didn't. And then maybe something you say or ask will be featured in a future episode.
Yeah, just might. So thanks again, and take care.
So long, everyone.